People of Africa, brothers and sisters of Cameroon, and all of you listening beyond these borders, I do not come here today to deliver another speech. I come to release a cry that has been trapped too long. A cry that pierced through prison walls. A cry that shattered the silence of a sleeping nation. A cry that awakened consciences we all thought were dead. And this cry carries a name, Anicet Ekane. This cry was not born in the studios of your television networks. It was not manufactured in the palaces of the powerful. It was not crafted by your so-called journalists who serve the system. No. This cry was born in the very depths of injustice itself. It was born when they chained the wrists of a man whose only crime was daring to think, daring to speak, daring to dream of a better future for his people. This cry was born the moment truth itself became a threat to those in power. And understand this clearly. This is not just the cry of one man who died behind bars. This is the cry of an entire continent that has been suffocated for generations. A continent where free souls are locked away, where courageous voices are silenced, where those who dare to awaken are crushed beneath the boot of tyranny. Every time one of our brothers falls, the tyrants celebrate in their palaces. But something else happens too. The people begin to wake up. And let me tell you something that terrifies these rulers. This awakening will not stop. It cannot be stopped. It will grow. It will spread like wildfire across this continent. It will topple everything that deserves to be toppled, because death has never killed courage. Prison walls have never contained an idea, and brutality has never defeated truth. People of Africa, this cry echoing across our lands today is the cry of a continent that refuses to carry these chains any longer. We are exhausted from being governed by men who fear us. We are tired of being watched and controlled by those who rob us blind. We are finished with being punished by those whose duty is to serve us. The death of Anicet Ekane is not some unfortunate accident. It is not a tragic coincidence. It is the final symptom of a diseased system rotting from within. A system where the opponent must die so the tyrant can sleep peacefully at night. A system where expressing your thoughts becomes a criminal offense. A system where your very existence requires you to remain silent and obedient. But I promise you this, we will not be silent. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Today, Africa rises to accuse. Africa stands to refuse. Africa mobilizes to resist. And this resistance will not fade when the sun rises tomorrow. It will not disappear after we bury our dead. It will continue and intensify until every leader on this continent understands one fundamental truth. You do not govern against your own people. You cannot rule through fear and intimidation. You cannot build a nation on the broken bodies and silenced voices of those who think for themselves. Today, the cry of Anicet Ekane belongs to Cameroon. But tomorrow it will echo across every nation in Africa. Because injustice recognizes no borders. And neither does courage. And neither does the spirit of resistance that is rising right now. Now let me speak to you about the man they tried to erase from history. A man whose name now thunders like war drums in every awakened conscience across this continent. Anicet Ekane. Some called him an opposition leader. Others labeled him an activist. And in the dark corridors of power, they whispered his name with trembling fear. But I will tell you what Anicet Ekane really was. He was not just an opponent of the regime, he was an idea made flesh. And the most dangerous truth that tyrants never learn is this. True ideas never die. You can kill the man, you can bury his body, but the idea lives on forever. Let me tell you about this man. Not the lies spread by a desperate regime, not the propaganda manufactured to justify his murder. I will tell you about the human being. Anicet Ekane was a simple man. He woke early each morning. He walked among his people without guards or barriers. He spoke plainly, without manipulation or political calculation. He was not searching for power or position. He was searching for truth. He had no armed escort protecting him, no convoy of armored vehicles. The only shield he carried was his courage, and that courage is precisely what they needed to destroy. But what truly terrified this regime was not the man himself. It was the idea he represented. The idea that freedom is not some privilege granted by a president when he feels generous. Freedom is a fundamental right that belongs to the people. The idea that democracy is not something you beg for on your knees. Democracy is something you claim, something you fight for, something you build with your voice, your debates, your awakened consciousness. The idea that Cameroon deserves better than decades of imposed silence. Better than political dinosaurs sitting on their thrones as if they rule over a graveyard of the living dead. The idea that power is not eternal. Power is temporary. Power is borrowed from the people, and the people can take it back. In the hallways of the regime, this idea had a face, this idea had a voice, this idea had a name, Anicet Ekane. Now I want you to understand something that should shake you to your core. How does a man without an army terrify a regime armed to the teeth? How does a man without wealth or resources frighten those who control everything? How does a man with no television network or media empire become the greatest threat to those in power? I will tell you why. Because weak regimes fear exactly what strong regimes respect. A voice speaking truth without fear. Because in a system built on lies, one honest voice is more powerful than 10,000 soldiers. Because one awakened mind is worth more than all the weapons in the world. And Anicet Ekane was a blazing fire of consciousness that could not be contained. He possessed a rare and dangerous gift, the ability to transform the suffering of ordinary people into political awakening. When Anicet spoke, the walls of deception crumbled. When he spoke, the masks worn by corrupt leaders slipped away. When he spoke, the entire system shook with fear. He did not threaten the stability of Cameroon. He threatened the stability of the lies holding the regime together. And for a government that survives only through fear and manipulation, nothing is more dangerous than a man who removes fear from the hearts of the people. They did not kill him because he was dangerous to the nation. He was dangerous because he spoke the truth. And I will say this loudly for everyone to hear. He did not threaten Cameroon. The awakening nation threatened the regime because people were finally opening their eyes. Every tyrant in history fears the same enemy. An aware population, a conscious people who refuse to obey blindly. Anicet Ekane was building that consciousness brick by brick. That is why they locked him away. And imprisoning him was not punishment. It was a confession of their own weakness. When you imprison a man for his ideas, you reveal your own fragility. When you let a thinker die in your custody, you sign your own guilty verdict. But here is what these oppressors will never comprehend. The harder you try to extinguish a flame, the more you set the entire forest on fire. The death of Anicet Ekane did not end this struggle. It purified it. It elevated it. It transformed a man into an eternal symbol. It turned a voice into an echo that will never fade. It converted an injustice into a rallying cry heard across the continent. Right now, in the streets of cities we cannot yet name, in villages across Cameroon, in university classrooms, in crowded neighborhoods, the name Anicet Ekane is no longer just a name. It has become a reminder that freedom is not negotiable, a reminder that power always belongs to the people, never to the rulers. A reminder that human dignity is not a gift from the government. It is a sacred right we are born with. And this is a warning to every tyrant listening. Anicet Ekane embodied what corrupt leaders fear most, an awakened people. And an awakened people is no longer a herd of sheep, no longer a mindless crowd, no longer helpless victims. An awakened people becomes an unstoppable force. And today that force carries his name forward. Now we must speak about what is always hidden behind thick walls and armored doors and bureaucratic procedures. The death of a man behind bars. Yes, I speak of how Anicet Ekane died, but understand this clearly. This was not an ordinary death, not a personal tragedy. This is a political assassination, a tragedy that exposes the rotting core of a failed system, the brutality of illegitimate power, and the complicit silence of everyone who looked away while it happened. Prison walls speak if you know how to listen. They tell stories of anguish and abandonment and crushing solitude. They absorb the cries and whispers and desperate prayers. Every wall and every cell is a witness. And these witnesses reveal a terrible truth. Power can chain the body, but it can never imprison consciousness. In the cell where they locked Anicet Ekane, those walls heard his thoughts. They heard his absolute refusal to surrender. They heard his determination to remain free in spirit even while his body was in chains. But walls cannot fight against bureaucratic indifference. They cannot challenge institutional silence. They cannot overcome the calculated cruelty of those in power. So tell me this. How does an opposition figure die in a system that claims to follow the rule of law? How does a man disappear while the outside world remains ignorant? The answer is simple and horrifying. Through the process of organized forgetting, first you isolate him, then you ignore him, then slowly, deliberately, his health deteriorates. His spirit weakens. His life fades away. Without noise, without witnesses, without anyone to hear his final words. And that is the real crime. Not the imprisonment itself, not even the terrible conditions. The crime is the conscious decision to do nothing while a human life slips away. And this crime has no walls. It extends far beyond any prison, because silence equals complicity. Every government official who closed their eyes shares the guilt. Every institution that looked away is responsible. Every citizen who became comfortable with injustice enabled this murder. Paul Biya, you let a man die, not because he was weak, but because he was dangerous. Dangerous because he carried truth like a weapon. Dangerous because he refused to bow before your lies. Dangerous because he represented everything the people of Cameroon hungered to become. Free, awakened, conscious, unbreakable. And you need to understand something. It was not an accident that Anicet Ekane was imprisoned. It was not coincidence that he was forgotten. This is how your system operates. You extinguish the light so fear can continue to rule in darkness. But you have made a fatal miscalculation. Symbols never die. Every drop of blood spilled, every breath stolen, every life destroyed becomes fuel for the resistance. Anicet Ekane is gone from this world, but his presence grows stronger every single day. In the streets where people march, in the minds of those who refuse to forget, in the hearts of everyone who rejects injustice. Every cell he suffered in, every day they tried to break him. Every wall they used to silence him. All of it now carries his legacy forward. And that legacy is intellectual and moral rebellion that cannot be stopped. Look carefully at what I am describing. This is not an isolated incident. This pattern repeats across our entire continent. From the prisons of Central Africa to the dungeons of West Africa, this silent brutality is deployed against anyone who dares to think independently. Every time another Anicet Ekane falls, an entire nation faces a test. The conscience of Africa itself is under attack. The future of this continent hangs in the balance. People of Africa, we face a choice. We can remain silent and become accomplices to murder, or we can rise up and transform this crime into a revolution. I, Ibrahim Traoré, have made my choice. I choose to speak, to shout until my voice gives out, to awaken this continent from its induced coma, because a people who close their eyes today will weep tears of blood tomorrow, but a people who act decisively today will build the future their children deserve. And I make this promise on the grave of Anicet Ekane. His death will not be forgotten. It will be carved into our collective memory. It will be taught to our children and grandchildren. It will serve as an eternal reminder that freedom must be defended, that justice is never given freely, that courage cannot be purchased at any price. We will ensure that this crime becomes a beacon of light for everyone fighting oppression anywhere on earth. People of Cameroon, people of Africa. Now I must speak about something many fear to name openly. I must address the power structure itself, the symbolic figure that some are too frightened to criticize. Yes, I speak of Paul Biya in this moment of truth. I speak of a leader who allowed a man to die, and in doing so, allowed part of the conscience of an entire people to die with him. Paul Biya has everything required to feel invincible. Palaces, soldiers, laws written to protect him, international alliances, but true power is not measured in wealth, not in the size of your army, not in how many decades you cling to office. True power is something you cannot buy or steal, the genuine respect of your people, and this is where the fear originates, a man speaking truth to power, a population daring to think for themselves. These forces cannot be controlled with money, cannot be locked behind bars, cannot be killed with bullets. They are eternal. What most people fail to see is this: the real enemy of any tyrant is not foreign invasion, not military coups, not international criticism. The real enemy is the shadow of his own guilty conscience. In this moment, Paul Biya fears that shadow. He fears his decisions being examined, being analyzed, being judged by history. He fears the truth breaking through the propaganda. The truth that he chose to do nothing, that he chose to let a man carrying the voice of millions die in obscurity, and that fear corrupts everything. It destroys, it isolates. This is how power hides behind bureaucracy and walls. This is how a man disappears into deliberate forgetfulness. The real scandal is that this regime did not fear Anicet Ekane for what he did. They feared what he represented, a conscious people, a population capable of thinking independently, a nation refusing blind obedience. And any government that fears its own people has already signed its death warrant. Because fear reveals that power is no longer respected. Fear shows that people are waking up. Fear means truth is coming and nothing can stop it. A dignified leader never abandons citizens, even those who criticize him harshly. A dignified leader never chooses fear over justice. A dignified leader never uses prison to silence the voice of the people. In this moment, Paul Biya has failed completely. He did not listen. He did not protect. He allowed a man to die whose voice represented the hope of thousands. And every citizen must understand this fundamental truth. A leader's responsibility never stops with his allies or his personal comfort. It begins with those who have no one else to speak for them. But power is not only dangerous because of what it does, power is dangerous because of what it refuses to see. Paul Biya believes that isolation and arrogance and the walls he has built can protect his position forever. But in truth, these walls have become his own prison. Arrogance is a chain preventing him from seeing justice clearly. Isolation is poison destroying any remaining legitimacy. And when fear replaces respect, history writes its verdict in permanent ink. Today I wield truth as my weapon. Every word I speak breaks through walls of fear. Every sentence tears away the veil of indifference. Every accusation is a reminder that truth always triumphs in the end. Because the people, the real people, never forget those who abandon them. The people remember their heroes and martyrs. And eventually, inevitably, the people collect payment for injustice delivered. Paul Biya, these words are your warning. The death of Anicet Ekane is not a buried secret. It is not some forgotten weakness. It is an accusation echoing in every African heart that still beats with dignity. And what you believe you have hidden away is not sleeping. It is not fading. It will never be forgiven. The entire continent is watching, understanding, judging. And Africa never makes mistakes when the question is justice and courage. People of Cameroon, brothers and sisters across Africa, today we must lift the veil on what your nation could have been, what the state should represent, and what it has become under the crushing weight of fear and institutional indifference. We speak of responsibility, we speak of justice. We speak of what every leader owes their people and what every people owe their own future. A state worthy of its name listens to all voices, even those voices that criticize and challenge. A state worthy of respect defends every life, even the lives of those who think differently. Anicet Ekane should have been protected by his government. His voice should have been heard and considered. His right to life should have been absolutely sacred and inviolable. But what do we see instead? A state that closes its eyes to suffering. A state that transforms justice into a weapon against its own citizens. A state that allows ideals to die along with the courageous men who carry them forward. A country rich in culture and history and brave people cannot be built on the silence of consciousness. Every decision a leader makes, every instance of indifference, every act of negligence gets written into history permanently. And when the state allows a man like Anicet Ekane to die, history judges without mercy. History does not forgive inaction, does not excuse the complicity of silence, does not overlook contempt for human rights. If Cameroon had been a dignified state, prisons would not be death chambers. Ideas would not be treated as crimes, but as contributions to national dialogue. Leaders would be accountable to their people and to history itself. Then Anicet Ekane would be alive today. Then the people would believe in their government. Then the nation would grow in light instead of festering in shadow. But that is not what happened. The greatest pain is not only losing a man, the greatest betrayal is when the state abandons its most courageous children, when government turns its back on those who believe in it most, when it betrays future generations for the comfort of entrenched power. And the people see everything. The people suffer in silence, but the people never forget. People of Cameroon and all of Africa understand this truth. A state is never strong because it crushes dissent. A state is strong because it protects all its people. Strong because it inspires confidence and trust. Strong because it improves life for everyone, even those brave enough to criticize. And when the state fails this fundamental test, it does not collapse alone. It brings down the hope of an entire continent into despair and distrust. Today, facing the judgment of history, we have two choices. We can accept inaction and fear and continue living under oppression, or we can stand up, demand justice. Rebuild a state worthy of our dignity, and never allow another Anicet Ekane to die without massive resistance. I tell you now, the choice to act is the only path to dignity. The choice to act is the only path to a free Cameroon and a liberated Africa. We promise this. Never forget what the state has abandoned. Never allow silence to replace justice. Never accept that fear should guide our leaders. And even in pain, even in rage, even facing terrible injustice, the people of Cameroon and Africa will continue to rise. The people will continue building the state we should have had all along. People of Cameroon, brothers and sisters of Africa, now we reach the chapter that every tyrant fears most, the power of the people. Because it is not enough to discuss justice in palace chambers, not enough to condemn crimes in newspaper columns, not enough to cry quietly in the darkness. The true force of Africa is the people. Awakened, conscious, determined to reclaim what is rightfully theirs. A leader holds power only because the people grant it, either willingly or through intimidation and fear. But power remains a responsibility, never a privilege to be abused. When a state allows a man like Anicet Ekane to die, it forgets one fundamental truth. The people always have the final word. The people decide the destiny of their nation. And when this people truly understand their collective power, they have absolutely nothing to fear from tyrants. Revolt is not born from hatred, it emerges from injustice, from unbearable pain, from awakened consciousness that refuses to bend or break. Every invisible injustice, every silent death, every official lie adds fuel to the flame burning in the hearts of the people. And this flame is the only light capable of destroying the darkness cast by tyranny. Anicet Ekane in his life and in his death ignited this flame. One man alone can be forgotten. But a conscious people, a determined population united in purpose, no wall, no weapon, no tyrant in history has ever been able to stop that force. The regime believes fear divides people, and sometimes that is true. But truth and justice and the memory of martyrs unite the people, and when the people rise together, the entire world trembles at their power. The African people never forget. Every injustice is recorded in our collective memory. Every voice silenced is engraved in our consciousness. Every martyr becomes a symbol and an inspiration. And these symbols grow stronger with truth. No tyrant can erase them. Anicet Ekane has died, but his name has become the echo awakening millions of sleeping consciences. People of Cameroon and Africa, it is not enough to listen to my words today. Not enough to feel anger rising in your chest. Not enough to whisper your outrage in private conversations. You must act. You must speak loudly. You must demand justice relentlessly. You must shake awake everyone still sleeping. Every action matters. Every voice counts. Every gesture of solidarity becomes a weapon against injustice. Remember this always. Courts may fail you. Leaders may betray you. Institutions may close their eyes and cover their ears. But the people never betray justice when they are truly awake. The people never close their eyes once consciousness has been ignited. The people remain the final defense of honor, truth, and human dignity. That is why we must protect the memory of Anicet Ekane with everything we have. That is why we must transform his death into an engine driving consciousness and resistance forward. The revolt I describe is not mindless violence, not blind destruction. It is moral, conscious, determined, and strategic. Every action, every word, every protest is another stone removed from the wall of injustice we are demolishing together. The African people, when they finally understand their true power, become absolutely invincible. And no prison, no dictator, no amount of fear can ever reduce that power or turn back that tide. The future belongs to us. The future belongs to the awakened. The future belongs to those who refuse to die quietly. And that future starts now.